Our first speaker is going to be Dr. Bill Hollis of the Carthage Veterinary Service. He is going to be speaking to us on why eliminate PD from the U.S. national herd. Dr. Hollis is a veterinarian with Carthage. He has been in veterinary practice since 1996. He currently serves as the president of the Professional Swine Management, a production service company. Dr. Hollis also serves this year as the acting president of the AASV.
If I stand right here, can you hear me in the back? Is this Carrie? Okay, thank you. Yep, perfect. Well, I'll stand right here, and I will also welcome questions and keep us on time. This is a follow-up to last year's conversation about PED elimination and the AASV task force for PED elimination. So really, I'll give you some Bill Hollis commentary, why we should eliminate, but I'll also share some update of where are we at in this process, why are we doing this, and who's involved. So that's really my intention with this morning. And I don't know where to point. Let me see. There we go. Thank you. So what's changed since last year? The American Association of Swine Veterinarians did establish a task force, and in our national organization, a task force basically is given a start date and an end date. So it's not a standing committee. It's not, let's work on this forever. Task forces also have a very specific and targeted 4 or 5 bullets of what are they going to do. And you'll find all of this if you Google AASV and then you go to task force. So there's a public acceptance of all this information. That group is made up of the 5 individuals that you'll see on the slide, Drs. Yeski, Rotolo, Pete Thomas. So there's a handful of Thomas vets, if you know those guys. Pete Thomas, Dr. J.Q. Zhang from Iowa State, Dr. Darren Madsen, and Dr. Mary Bottrell. What I hope you also see in that is there's this intention to make that a broad from the U.S. There's a practicing veterinarian in there from North Carolina, and then also broad in terms of scientific rigor. This is a task force, not intended to develop mandates, but to try to advance the ball. So that's the group that we've established. The good fortune is that the National Pork Board, which is both far bigger financially and far better at bringing in producer effort, is behind it as well. So Dr. Dusty Otokoven and Dr. Marisa Rotolo have come with cash, which is always nice, and then also supported getting that group together to foster this conversation. That task force put together a resolution that went to U.S. SHIP, so I'm going to actually make this audience participation. Please raise your hand. Who was at U.S. SHIP on that debate floor, House delegates? Thank you. So as you look around the room, there's a lot of people in this room. You've already heard the story. And so there is this ongoing conversation about, can we eliminate PED? If so, how? What tools do we need? And U.S. SHIP is a public, private, government, producer, scientist forum to debate that topic. It is, and as that debate floor brought forward, it's not intended to be a heavy-handed mandate nor a regulatory structure immediately. It's designed to allow for both producer input, government input, and the establishment of an ongoing program that is going to require further action. So that's in the very early stages. There was a vote to advance the ball to create a PED as one of the diseases. If you are there in U.S. SHIP, it's voluntary, so it's not going to conflict with the ASF and classical swine fever, CF strategies that are obviously for varying differences, far more impactful and directed by government involvement. But it is a framework to allow us to begin that conversation. I would throw in here now, weight is more. And I'm sorry I'm only on the second slide, Deb. I'll keep it moving. I promise. That task force is also drawing to the forefront the immune tools. So if I'm in an area of advanced PED activity and you're trying to talk to me about PED elimination, it may be a hell no. Why do I want a naive sow farm in the middle of all these finishers that are active with PED and I have no ability to move it out of this region? So that's why there's this conversation about what are the tools available and how do we further improve those tools. And that, hopefully, task force will encourage that conversation and that debate. They're also pulling to the forefront the prevalence identification. So which regions do we know have a higher level of incidence and what are the things that we can do? Those of you that were at US SHIP, you saw Dr. Pete Thomas's work on transportation biosecurity and the immediate reduction and success. If you haven't heard about it or seen it, I'd encourage you to go looking for it. Those are the type of things that we can continue to bring forward. What has been successful, and as an industry, why would we do this? All right. Just as a quick review, and this is where I'll go much faster, I promise. We know when it exploded, and if you haven't gone back to some of the history, again, just a short 10 years ago, we were challenged at that time by a few economists that said there is risk of malaise with this disease, and that was in 2015. Remember, our producers saw a dramatic increase in profitability. They saw a dramatic improvement in piglet survivability. They were making positive gilts, keeping positive sow farms, and return to productivity. And that economic study said there is some risk that this will drive a malaise, basically, in dealing with this disease. And that was just 1 year after they saw it. So I want to remind you, if you have a 5,000 sow farm and you've never had PED, I'm just going to remind you that if you get PED, you're going to lose all the pigs for no less than a month, and there's no way around it. So it's easy to do quick back-of-the-envelope math that if you have 5,000 sows, you're going to lose $500,000 the day you get the diagnostics. So let's remember that for those folks that are working hard to get rid of this disease. How do we prevent it from entry, and what is the cost? Now amplify that by the industry, and we'll get to the $50 million that I used last year. And the folks from Manitoba Pork that were in the audience that may be here today laughed at me, which is fair. They said, you're leaving out all the cost of packer losses, all the opportunity cost for slaughter pigs, all the hidden internal costs for things like changing transport and identifying locations for gilts. So again, the one farm, 5,000 sows that breaks, it's $500,000 overnight. The inventory, the other impact that I would have left out, or I'm sorry, I didn't leave out, but we're commonly missing is that burn of dumping feed in the pit that just happens to go through the pig. So in these finishers, it's not hard to calculate that it's at least $3 a pig. If you're breaking finishers with PED and you're dumping that feed through the pig for a week, right into the pit, and you have this broad 6-month population, the prevalence indications of approximately 15% that are going to go through that every day, all the time in our industry, would say we're looking at least $3 a pig. So again, rules of thumb. Is it big enough to say we should do something about it? That's my initial introductory slide. Yeah, there's millions of dollars to be saved, and it's a disease that we can eliminate. So now, what's the framework, or how do we get there to accomplish this? Well, those are why we have these open debate forums. Those are why we would encourage participation in that. Not to say if you do live in an area that's chronically infected and you do have to create stability with the only tool you have, which would be live exposure to young gilts, if you're living there today, please enter the debate or get your production teams to enter the debate, because those are the factors that need to be brought to the forefront to understand the value of the tools that we need to get rid of the virus. All right. We know that we can eliminate it in tightly controlled areas. We know that there's value in those gilts that have been given live exposure for when they enter the farrowing house. We accept all of that. So how do we accomplish elimination of a disease that could save $500,000 for a farm that's in a high-risk area? So what can we do? Modified live vaccine is a tool, and I've thrown it out there because Dr. J.Q. Jang, frankly, did the research and shared it publicly. And so he's on that task force, not the only tool, and certainly one of many strategies and one that can create conflicts in those areas where we've already eliminated it. So how do we differentiate between vaccine and live exposure? How do we work to minimize the activity? How long would it take? Again, all up for the debate within that forum where we need this conversation. Those who benefit, again, we're trying to cut $50 million out of our annual herd as a loss every year. And again, it may be 3 times that. It may be. The folks in Manitoba that talked at our U.S. ship that had been highly successful at stamping PED out of a region from a controlled, concentrated effort would say that that's just barely scratching the possibility of opportunity. So, and the fact that our economists that looked at our industry said, we will end up here if we continue to just live with PED. It creates a malaise that's a drag on the industry. So, where do we go from here? I would say, again, and speaking both from the AASV as an association and as a producer veterinarian that sees this as tremendous risk, where do we go from here? Well, further the communication, further the debate, bring forward these tools for control. And I think I can go back. Yeah, if we can accomplish this organized self-regulation, by all means, we're much smarter to get there. And I think we're fortunate that we have a structure like U.S. SHIP that allows us to communicate openly, effectively, and productively with our producers and with our regulatory agencies. So that's why we use them, and that's why we need to be there. More specifically, the AASV will continue. We've got this task force structured for 2 years. We're in year 1. So it's not this, again, ongoing forever. We're under a time frame. The immune control discussion and debate, there are resolutions that are advancing within the USAHA, within the AASV that support further involvement in evaluation of tools like modified live vaccine for PED. Again, it's not either of those bodies' decision, but we want to keep that debate in the forefront. We would like a product like that. And Zoetis has been a great partner. If I haven't said that yet or you haven't read it, Zoetis invested in helping us eliminate this disease long ago. That research was published and presented over 5 years ago. And so now it's, again, is this a product we want? I would say yes. Let's figure out how to get it to the front if it's a tool that we can use. And then from the organized debate, I've been beating that drum, but I would say U.S. SHIP has agreed by a decision that they would support creating PED as, again, a voluntary tag, as a certification process within U.S. SHIP that you can volunteer to have your herd PED certified free, and there is a step process that will come with that. That's the first step. I would envision that AASV task force taking that on to try to build some framework around it that will come back to U.S. SHIP next year, and we'll further that conversation. AASV annual meeting is in March in San Francisco, and I want to see everybody there. So this is my opportunity to beat the drum one more time. San Francisco has a lot of wonderful things to offer, and I would encourage you, if you haven't gone online, to go online and look, because I would really love to see you there. And I believe that we have an opportunity to enjoy that city together and to further these conversations that are critical to both our veterinary businesses and to our clients. I would say that our universities and our industry meetings continue to talk about PED, and to this point, they've been more operational. How do we control it? Where do we find it? How can we get it washed out of our trucks? What I'm not sure we have been as intentional about is if we eliminate it, what risk does that pose? So if we have a tool that now we've established that's created modified live virus activity in a region, what risk does that pose? And then how do we mitigate that risk? Because we may need that to, again, get rid of the virus for good. And then I would also just ask you to take this back to your companies and clients. If they're not talking about getting rid of PED, please initiate that conversation. This is not going to happen overnight. This is not going to be something where people are placed out on an island, but it is a healthy debate that we need to further. Why should we do it? Because we can. We have the tools, and we've gotten it out of regions, so we can. I think I've just about beat that drum as hard as I can. I don't know that I've left any of this out, but I would welcome your questions at any time or move on in our elimination. All right. Thank you.
We do have a few minutes for questions, so if there is any, I'll wait just a second. But I guess I can maybe just get started. So some of the pushback that I know I have heard is, but I don't wash all my trucks now, and I'm going to have to add that infrastructure for washing and, you know, extra trucks and things like that. What do you say, or how do you help to get that message across, you know, on obviously the cost of the PD, but then is it worth it to do all of that?
Yeah, and that's an excellent question that's been bantered. Roger, I'm looking at you. When did that start? 17, 18? Sorry, I put you on the spot. But that's why we're here. Yeah, so there are active conversations about the availability of places to wash your truck, which is very limited. There are conversations about, can we find alternatives to forcing more water through a truck? And there's some debate on the success of those. And there is a few of those folks that stuck their neck out, made a big investment, and then went, oh my gosh, yeah, this really helped. So again, if you're a veterinarian in a tough position to justify, please pull out your AASV membership, find Dr. Pete Thomas and call him or send him a message, because he's got really convincing data on how they were successful at getting it out through simply just removing organic matter from trucks and separating supplies so that you have greater control of which trucks and trailers do what. And those two steps are not to be minimized as inexpensive. They are expensive. They're also challenging, because all logistics and all operations are very challenging, but they're worth the evaluation, and I believe we have sufficient proof to validate they're a worthy effort. I just think it's going to take a while to get there, definitely given the fact that we don't have to look very far to see what the losses were last year just in the business. And so being respectful that there's been tremendous losses, being mindful that there's already a cost sunk in production if we don't get it out of those finishers. If, again, you can justify in your own production system, $3 a pig, use that number, use your feed cost and your flow and your transfer. It's a fair question that we've been challenging and fighting over for 5 years. Any other questions while I'm here? Because I'm certainly happy to take it. I got one more quick comment.
Yeah.
If that's okay. Sure, go for it. One other quick comment as I think about some of our peers, some of our veterinarians that are put in tough positions to debate this among their production teams or production systems. They're all busy, and production folks are operationally driven, not organized debate driven, but I would ask them to join that conversation through US SHIP or through one of the working groups within US SHIP. So if they're not there or if they're not engaged yet, go get that information and get them engaged, because that's where they can say, here's my problem. Here's what I got to deal with. And the example would be, are you trying to tell me you're not going to allow me to deliver my pigs? And my answer to that is no, not at all. That's not our mandate nor our mission. US SHIP is designed to say, okay, if your production system is an environment that's incredibly difficult to eliminate, and this production system has worked very hard to eliminate, how do we prevent exposure first, and then how do we help with tools to work toward elimination in those regions where we would like to get rid of it? But we don't know what those challenges are without those folks in the room. Yeah.
Sorry about that. You mentioned US SHIP. I'm very excited about the resolution that was passed at US SHIP regarding PED to explore a voluntary certification. Maybe, how long is that expected to take? Like, when would we guess that we might have that kind of certification for my clients to achieve?
Is Tyler Holk in the room? Do you mind being put on the spot to ask what it would take and when?
Yeah, thanks, Joel. Thanks, Bill. The goal for that resolution is we'd come back next year already, in September of next year, with some initial proposals. These would be actual standards to be voted on. Initial conversations with the task force would be, well, we'd look to NPIP, which has most of their diseases are domestic diseases. They have clean and monitored certification status. So work through the AASV task force, others that would be interested, to bring standard proposed to be voted on next year already. And at that point, if that passes, breeding herds, grow finish sites could choose to become certified for PEDv already spring of 2026.
The only caution I would add in that is it's a little bit like our conversations in our production systems on traceability. There's sort of this, we've got all these different programs, and what I don't want you to do is say we don't need to do anything about it till 2026. We need to further that team, engage with that team, and again, I put the 5 names up there, but it's a broader conversation with what the challenges are, so that when we establish those best practices, we take into account what it needs to be. How do we accomplish those best practices? What do they mean to my operation? So I would encourage them to engage with those folks, reach out to those individuals, or get involved in a working group that's likely to bring forward action by 2026. Is that fair? Okay, thanks.